Before we start the video, a large thank you to Chema Snowwater for their support on Patreon. Thank you, my friend. I hope you enjoy the video. And a massive thank you to Halo Burner and Ryan Bellin for their immense and continued support of the channel this month on Patreon. It is greatly appreciated, gentlemen, and I hope you enjoy the video. Hello, everybody. Today we are going to cover some ranged AI. So we're going to get started on making our AI actually fire a bow. So I'm going to duplicate the Knight dummy here now. And by the way, if you have any other AI requests, throw them down in the comments. I know you guys had a bunch before when we were doing other things. I think I have most of them written out, if not all of them. But if you want me to cover some specific AI functionality, let me know below. So I'm going to duplicate the Knight we got, and I'm going to go ahead and get our bow weapon game object and drag it in where the straight sword is and delete the shield, basically. So the goal of this video will be to set up the framework to allow him to fire and draw an arrow, and then in the next video we'll make it so he can hold the arrow for a specific point in time and release it, sync on the network, and maybe we'll cover a really weird way of syncing arrows that I do in NEF. I can just tell you the pros and cons of it and why I would use it, and if you guys are interested we can cover that as well. So I'm going to go to the network list, a character network list. What did I call that? Is that even on this? Default network prefabs. Okay, no, we just have the one list. Make sure your archer dummy is added here. He will probably be automatically added here if this is still your only list. So you're good to go. I'm going to go ahead and go into my fire projectile action to yoink the code here. So right down where we have notify server of drawn projectile, that's where we want to grab. So if we go to the character network, player network manager, and we can just yoink this here from the client RPC. Basically, what we're going to do is handle all of this via animation events, and then we're going to more or less let the animator dictate when the arrow fires, and we're going to control the animator based on a timer we're going to set up. So I'm just going to get the functionality, the basic functionality for loading and firing a projectile, and then we'll take it from there and see where the time's at. So we have ranged combat. I'm going to make a public void load projectile, but actually I'm going to do draw projectile. That sounds more appropriate since we're doing a bow. And I'll post or paste all this in here, but this is not going to work obviously because this is for the player, and we have some things we need to set up like an animator. So make this a virtual void, because maybe depending on what kind of AI character you have, they're going to draw arrows or projectiles in different ways. You can have some shared logic. I'm going to make an AI Ranger Combat Manager and an AI Ranger Equipment Manager, and I'm going to utilize these two scripts to set up some variables for our bow. But maybe you have some creature that uses some like custom weapon, like a limb, or it throws its own head. I don't know. You can use different kinds of things if they use an animator. So I'm just going to separate this into a class that inherits from the base class, and then we can kind of override it and control what we need. So this is going to inherit from AI Combat Manager, and I'm going to delete the namespace and update functionality, drop in my, delete the update functionality and drop in my namespace as is per tradition. And I'll make this next one derive from the character equipment manager. And notice we have no AI equipment manager in this series. I guess it's because we've never needed one up to this point. So you could make one and make this derive from that if you want, but I'm going to keep it as is. So I'll make a header for bow, and I'll make a game object for the bow object. You can get your animator from this if you want, but I'm just going to make a variable for that too. And the reason why I have bow object here, and I can cover this if you want, just let me know. I actually hide this when the character dies, and then I instantiate a physics version of the object and drop it so it looks like they're dropping from their hand. There's just a nice bit of polish you can add. It's something for you, that's fun for you to try on your own, but if not, I can cover it just to let me know. So other than that, we're going to have the bow animator. Now let's jump back to the AI Ranger Combat Manager and let's override draw projectile. Let's paste that original logic, and I've already messed up because I don't have it anymore. So I'm going to go back and yoink this from our client RPC one more time. And I'm going to paste it in here, and now we can start making some changes. So the first thing we need though is an AI Ranger Manager so we can reference our AI Equipment Manager. So let's go ahead and comment this out for now. And let's go real quick make an AI Ranger Manager. So I'm going to jump into my AI character scripts folder. I'm going to create a new model behavior and call it AI Ranger Manager. And then I'm going to open that up, delete the start and update functionality, and drop in my namespace as is per tradition. So this is just going to be obviously the manager class like we've done 1,000 times before. So we're just going to get the other components of related classes to this. So let's make this derived from AI Character Manager, and this will be used to get our Ranger Combat Manager and our Ranger Equipment Manager. And should we need anything else that is Ranger related, we can get that from here as well. So I'm going to hide it inspector because I don't need to see it. Whoops, didn't mean to copy that or paste that again. I'm going to copy hide inspector public, say AI Ranger Equipment Manager. There we go. Override the awake and call both AI Ranger Combat Manager and AI Ranger Equipment Manager and say get component because they sit on the same game object as this component. All right, let's go back over to our Combat Manager here now, the AI Ranger Combat Manager that is. Let's get a reference to our AI Ranger Manager on awake by saying Ranger is equal to, Ranger being the local variable was created up there, or the variable local to this class. We can say get combat or get component AI Ranger Manager. I can't talk today. Okay, let's go back here and remove all of that comment slash green block. And let's go over here and say the bow animator is equal to the ranger.ai ranger equipment manager.bow animator. Now, if the bow animator is null, it should never be, simply return. If you want, you can throw a debug log or a message to yourself reminding you that you forgot to drag in the bow animator variable. And then we're going to reference our ranger, and then we're going to reference our character effects manager. Do we have an active draw projectile for all characters? Let's see. And not just a player. I might have, yes we do. Okay, so that should be fine. All right, now we need a projectile of sorts. Now you could put this on your character inventory manager if you want. And lastly, we play the sound effect, but I'm going to go and put it on my AI Ranger Equipment Manager since it's just unique to the Ranger class. So right below bow, I'm going to say public projectile. What did I call that? Range projectile item. And I'm going to say projectile. So then we can reference the instantiated arrow directly from that. And we can do that. And we're also going to say if, well, I guess I should make a local variable for it first. One sec. So we can say range projectile item. I'm going to call this projectile is equal to ranger.ai ranger equipment manager.projectile, or whatever I just called it. Yes, projectile. And then likewise, we can say if the projectile is null, return. It should never be. If you want to throw yourself a debug log warning you or telling you that you forgot the projectile, also throw that in there. I'm going to instantiate the drawn projectile model then from the projectile, and instead of passing the left hand from the player, we can make a public transform here called draw hand, and this will be the hand that the arrow instantiates in. So we can do the exact same thing with draw hand that we did with our bow animator and our projectile. That is to create a local variable first and then get it, which saves us a bit of typing. And then if it's null, we can simply return. We know we can't move forward. I don't know why I just called that projectile instantiation location. I'm just going to shorten that to draw hand because it just reads much nicer. There we go. So if draw hand is null, also return. Again, one last time, throw a debug.log if you want to. And then we're going to come down here and just say draw hand. Okay, that's pretty much it for our draw projectile function. Now we need to go and fill in these variables here on our prefab, and then we can start writing our fire projectile function. But first, also make sure you add in the AI Range Manager, AI Ranger Combat Manager, and AI Ranger Equipment Manager, and then delete the other versions of those classes from the prefab so you don't have doubles. So let's go over here now and remove the Knight Combat Manager, remove the AI Character Manager, and remove the, what else we got? The Equipment Manager. I guess that would be Character Equipment Manager. So yeah, we don't have an AI unique version of that. Interesting. Okay, so I'm going to drag in my bow object and then my bow animator. And then my projectile I'll choose. I think we have one in this project, I want to say. Oh, it looks like the animator is on the child object of this. Let's see. Yes, it is. Okay. Okay, so the projectile is going to be standard arrow, I believe. Yes, it is. And the draw hand, I'm going to make my character's left hand. So again, if you're using a different model or different setup than me, this might look a little bit different, obviously. So just make any modifications you need to. I'm going to delete the Knight's shield. That was still there, apparently. I'll only delete the model. Just save that. Now let's go over to fire projectile action, because I forgot to actually get the animation where we actually load the bow on the character itself. So yoink the player action, animator manager, play target action, bow draw. And obviously we're going to replace the references to the player with references to our AI character. So this will become ranger.character animator manager.play target action animation. And then we're still going to use the bow draw. So I don't think I have an AI character animator manager either. Nope, that's a NEF only thing, I suppose. Didn't need it for this project. All right, let's save. All right, let's go over to our animator. You can see here that while we're holding the arrow, we never go to fire. And if we go to fire here, you can see there's an event where we do a fire or release arrow on the first frame. So that tells us two things. One, we can go get release arrow from the player combat manager. That's cool. Now, let's make this override, and let's create a virtual void in the base class so we can use it on the AI as well. So let's copy this name, go to the base class, public virtual void release arrow. But yeah, that boolean being there to not move to release arrow until that's toggled, we're going to utilize that on our AI character to basically set a random time to hold the arrow for when they draw it between a minimum and maximum value. So that's going to do the lifting for us, basically the animator. And we'll sync that as a network variable using is holding arrow or has arrow notch, whatever we called it. So let's go over now and yoink all of this code under release arrow under the player combat manager, like so. Let's go to the AI Ranger Combat Manager, and then let's override that new function we just created a virtual void for. And then we can paste all of our code from the player in here. Now, we're going to have to make some sweeping changes because this is a bit different. So we'll start from the very top. 1, has arrow notched. Yeah, we need that. We're going to need that in the future. So let's go ahead and change this to Ranger. And I don't believe we have this on Character Network Manager. I think this is a Player Network Manager exclusive. So we got to move it back, but let's see. So I'm going to say Ranger dot. We don't even have an. Okay, yeah, we do have an AI Character Network Manager, and this is not here. So what we're going to do is go to the Player Network Manager, and we're going to find that variable and bring it back to its base class. We have is holding arrow and has arrow notch. I'm not quite sure why we have both of those right now, but I'll copy them both anyway. That seems like potentially an oversight on my behalf. We'll see. I'll take a look later. So down here under flags is fine. Let's paste it there. And that looks good. Okay, let's go back to release arrow. Now, this is fine. Where we're destroying the active projectile, we know we have a reference on our character effects manager, so this is fine. Just change the reference to from player to ranger and from player effects to character effects and do the same thing. Playing sound effect is the exact same thing, just reference ranger instead of the player. The bow animator, we know where to get that, so we can delete this if his two-handing weapon deal here, because it's a bit different with AI. We're just going to reference it directly, so we can say the ranger dot AI, AI ranger equipment manager dot bow animator. And if you want to do a check for null, you can, but if you've gotten this far, the bow should not be null, because in order to get to this point in the animation sequence, you need to actually draw the projectile. So well, I guess that's not necessarily true depending on how you set it up. So yeah, just check for null at any rate. So we're going to say range projectile item is equal to ranger AI equipment manager dot projectile, and then we can say if bow animator up here is null, return. If your projectile is null, return. Delete this check for any amount because we're not going to subtract it on the AI. We're just going to have infinite arrows. And you can rename this to whatever you want. This is just where the arrow instantiates. You call it release hand, or you can keep it the way it is. It doesn't matter. Up to you. This is just the game object of the arrow itself, the rigid body, and the damage collider. So delete this set projectile UI stuff and the subtract amount. Now, the instantiation location on our player is on the combat manager lock-on transform for reasons of making it more reliable when syncing. But that isn't really a necessary case for the AI because we're always going to have a target, so the arrow will always have the exact same direction. We're not free aiming basically, so this is entirely up to you wherever you want to put that. I'll just keep on the lock-on transform for now. Now you can set the damage here and change the character shooting projectile to ranger. Then down here, this Y rotationary fire, not needed, doesn't matter. And also, you're always going to have a target unless the target disconnects while the AI has the arrow drawn. So for that reason, you want this code here, just the bit where we had a target, and you point the arrow towards the target. However, just in case you don't get a null reference, let's say your AI is aiming at me and I'm playing with you, and I decide to Alt F4 just as the arrow is drawn. By the time it gets to release, the AI will have no target, and this will throw a null reference, so we'll do a check for a target, just for that one weird edge case. And then, if the target is null, we'll simply make the arrow face the same direction as the forward-facing direction of the actual AI character drawing the bow. So, other than that, it's going to work pretty much the same. Now, we're not going to fire the arrow with a server RPC, because we're going to let the arrow get fired from an animation event locally. And now I'm going to take a moment to talk about the weird syncing thing I mentioned before, and I'll tell you the pros and cons. So, there's a really unlucky edge case you can have where if, let's say I'm playing with you and you're the host, right? So visualize this in your head. You can come back to this or pause this after, but if you want to listen to this, this is mildly important to get a good visualization of it. Just visualize the fact that I'm playing with you and an AI shoots an arrow at me. Now let's say on your screen, I just get nicked in the elbow, but on my screen, I just clear the arrow. I'm not going to take damage, but you're going to see an arrow sticking out of my elbow. That's a little weird. So a way we can remedy this is to literally have it so the arrow on your end passes through my character, and we only check for a hit and also attach that like an arrow penetrating to a surface on my end. And then if I get hit, I send an RPC which generates a penetrated arrow in my elbow. Otherwise, the arrow will go right on through me on your end. And in really close calls, you won't even notice it, which is what this is for, because if the arrow just barely grazes my elbow, then obviously it'll just pass through and it'll just look like it never hit me. The only time this becomes very apparent is when, let's say you have a really bad lag spike, and on your end, the arrow drills me in the face. But on my end, I've gotten away from it like a second and a half ago, but for some reason my internet just dropped out for half a second, and you have that weird disconnect. But in my opinion, the pros vastly outweigh the cons, because in my testing, I never really noticed this arrow ghosting effect when there was a stable connection. It was only when we were lagging. And if you're lagging anyway because someone has bad internet, well, you're going to see a whole host of problems regardless of how the game is set up most of the time. So if you want me to cover that in the next video too, as well as the regular firing and shooting, please let me know. It'll add a bit more to the video, but I think it's worth it. But now we're at that portion of the video where you have enough to go on and get started. Try to get this working on your own. Set it up any way you can. Doesn't matter if it's broken, because in the next video I'll show you what I'm going to do, but I have full confidence in you that you can get something working very effectively. Great time to take some time here and learn to hone your problem solving skills and build more confidence in your abilities, because that is the greatest way to learn. Alright guys, that'll be all from me. Thank you very much for tuning in. I hope you learned something. I hope you have a very great weekend. Thank you to my patrons for keeping the series and the channel alive. Thank you to the lovely people who take the time to like and comment on these videos and share this series via word of mouth. It is alive and well because of you. I'll see you guys in the next one.